10 years. A whole decade had passed since Ryan, now 30, had last seen the Welcome to Maple Creek sign. The town, with its oak-lined streets and houses with inviting porches, seemed painfully the same, like a forgotten portrait in a drawer. He had fled that place not out of hatred but out of a desperate need to be just Ryan, and not one of the Miller brothers. He went to the big city to be a photographer, to prove that he could build a life away from the shadow of his family, and, if he was being honest with himself, away from the memory of a broken heart that he himself had caused. Now he was returning for the engagement of his brother David, the good son, the one who stayed. Nerves gnawed at Ryan's stomach, a mixture of longing and the fear that nothing, and yet everything, had changed. The reception at his childhood home was warm and chaotic. His mother hugged him tightly, his father slapped him on the back, a gesture that contained a decade of unspoken words. And then came David, his brother, also 30, but with a more solid, more established air. His smile was open, genuine, without a hint of resentment for the long absence. "You're back, you bastard," David said, wrapping him in a bear hug. "I thought we'd have to drag you to the altar." Ryan felt a pang of guilt. While he had lived a life of instability and loneliness, David had built a life there, in the town he had abandoned. And, from the looks of it, a very happy life. "You have to meet Sarah. Man, you won't believe it. She's everything," David said, his eyes shining. "I finally understand what you felt back then." The sentence hung in the air, a veiled reference to the past that Ryan had tried to bury. The house began to fill up for the engagement party. Uncles, cousins, family friends. Ryan felt like a stranger in his own story, answering questions about his life in the big city. But his focus was on David's happiness. He was genuinely happy that his brother had found someone. He deserved all the happiness in the world. "She's here," announced David, running to the front door. "Get ready to meet the woman who's finally going to set me straight." Ryan smiled, an honest and expectant smile. He turned, ready to extend his hand, to welcome the mysterious woman who had captured his brother's heart. And then, Ryan's world stopped spinning. The woman who walked through the door, with a smile that faltered for a fraction of a second upon seeing him, was Sarah, his Sarah, the girl whose letters he had stopped answering, the girl he had promised to come back for, the girl who was the biggest regret of his life. The smile on Ryan's face froze. He felt the blood drain from his face. She also turned pale, but quickly composed herself, a talent he imagined she had to learn after he left. David, radiant and oblivious to the electric current of shock and pain passing between them, put his arm around her waist. "Ryan, this is the woman of my life, Sarah," he said with pride. "Sarah, this is my older brother, Ryan, the one I've told you so much about." Sarah extended her hand, and her touch felt like an ice burn on Ryan's skin. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you," she said, her voice firm, but her eyes telling a completely different story. A story that only the two of them knew, and that now threatened to destroy everything. The engagement party was slow torture. Ryan and Sarah moved like magnets with inverted poles, repelling each other in an awkward dance to avoid any contact. But in his parents' small house, space was limited. They were forced to smile as David, overflowing with happiness, placed them side by side for a photo. "Look at that. My brother and my future wife. It's like you've known each other your whole lives, isn't it?" he said, laughing. The irony of the sentence was a stab wound for both of them. Every small talk was a minefield. "So, Ryan, you photograph landscapes?" Sarah asked, her voice perfectly controlled. "Yes, it's easier. Landscapes don't hold grudges," he replied. And only she understood the weight of those words. They were living a double dialogue, one for the world and another, silent and bitter, just for them. The first opportunity for a private conversation came 2 days later. Ryan found her on the old park bench overlooking the lake, the place that used to be their refuge. The confrontation was immediate, a whisper laden with a decade of pain. 10 years, Ryan, Sarah said, her voice trembling with restrained anger. 10 years and not one letter, not one email. You just disappeared. What did you expect me to do? Wait forever? He tried to explain, talked about being young, stupid, about feeling like he needed to prove himself before he could offer her anything. But the words sounded empty, flimsy excuses for the abandonment he had committed. And you? He retorted, the pain making him defensive. Why doesn't David know? He thinks we barely spoke. Because when I started to love your brother, you were just a healed wound, she confessed. He was good to me. He healed me. I wasn't going to let the ghost of the boy who destroyed me haunt the best thing that ever happened to me. To make matters worse, their families, in the innocence of wanting the brothers to reconnect, began to push them together. Their mother asked them to go together to pick up the flowers for the ceremony in a neighboring town. The car ride was a tense silence for an hour. But then, an old song they both loved came on the radio. Without meaning to, they both started to hum along softly. The ice broke. They started talking about the past, not about the wounds, but about the good memories, about the inside jokes, about each other's quirks that they still remembered. The familiarity was a dangerous balm, a return to a time when things were simple. The anger began to dissolve, giving way to a nostalgia that was both sweet and terrifying. They were remembering why they had fallen in love. On the way back, a heavy rain forced them to stop at a small roadside cafe. Sheltered from the storm, the outside world disappeared. The conversation deepened. I was an idiot, Sarah, Ryan admitted, looking at the coffee in his cup. There hasn't been a day in these 10 years that I haven't regretted leaving the way I did. Her eyes filled with tears. And there wasn't a day, for a long time, that I didn't hope you would come back, she confessed, her voice barely audible. It wasn't a declaration of love, but an admission of defeat, an acknowledgement that their past wasn't dead. It was just dormant. They didn't touch, but the intimacy of that moment was more dangerous than a kiss. By the time they got home, they knew the problem was no longer just about managing an old secret. The problem was fighting a feeling that was, to their mutual despair, very much alive. If you've ever had a past love that shook you, or if your heart is in your hands for Ryan, Sarah, and David, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to find out how this story will end. Your support is very important to us. Now let's get back to the growing tension in Maple Creek. The fragile truce between Ryan and Sarah shattered as soon as they returned home, replaced by a sharp and dangerous awareness of the feelings they had admitted. And they weren't the only ones to feel the change in atmosphere. Their mother, Mary, a woman with a keen instinct for the emotional currents of her family, began to notice. She noticed the glances that lingered a second longer than necessary. She noticed how they laughed at a joke that David didn't understand. Moved by a sense of unease, Mary went up to the attic and opened an old chest. Inside, she found a forgotten shoebox, filled with photos of a much younger Ryan and Sarah, embracing and love letters written with the dramatic intensity of adolescence. She realized that what she had dismissed as a school crush was in fact a deep love story, a story that apparently never had an end. With a heavy heart, Mary decided to confront Ryan. She found him in the backyard, pretending to photograph the flowers. Ryan, she began, her voice soft but firm. I found your letters to Sarah. Ryan felt the ground disappear from under him. I don't want to know the details, she continued, but I see how you look at each other, and I see the happiness on your brother's face. David is a good man and he adores you. He doesn't deserve to have his heart broken. Whatever this is that's happening between you two, this unresolved thing, you need to end it before it ends our family. The warning was not a threat but a plea. And for Ryan, that made it even more devastating. The weight of his guilt doubled. To add to the torture, David's trust was blind and absolute. One evening, while they were having a beer on the porch, David put his arm around Ryan's shoulders. Man, it's so good to have you back, he said. I want you to be my best man, of course, and I'm so glad that you and Sarah are getting along. I was afraid it would be weird since you barely know each other. But she said, "You're great. Having the two people I love most in the world getting along, it's all I could ever want." Every word of trust was like a nail in the coffin of Ryan's conscience. He just smiled and nodded, the taste of beer turning bitter in his mouth. He was betraying the man who offered him the purest loyalty. The situation reached a boiling point one afternoon in the family barn, which they were decorating for the party. Ryan and Sarah were alone, hanging lights. The proximity and the silence were unbearable. "I can't do this, Sarah," Ryan whispered, stopping what he was doing. "Pretend I don't feel anything. Watching you marry him, it's killing me." "And what do you want me to do?" she replied, her eyes filled with panic. "Destroy his life? The kindest person I've ever known?" "I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go," he said, moving closer. The magnetic attraction suppressed for days became too strong. He raised his hand and touched her face. She leaned into him. Their lips were inches apart, and then the sound of the barn door opening made them jump back as if they had been shocked. It was Mary. She didn't say a word. She just looked at them, and on her face there was no anger, but a deep and devastating disappointment. She turned and left, leaving behind a silence that screamed that their secret was no longer a secret. Her mother's look of disappointment was more effective than any shout or accusation. That same night, Mary called them into the kitchen, the heart of the home, which now felt like a courtroom. "I'm not going to tell David," she said, her voice low and steady, cutting through the heavy silence. "I'm not going to be the one to shatter his world, but this charade ends today." She looked from one to the other, her face marked by a deep pain. "You two are going to make a decision. Scenario 1. You bury this, whatever it is, forever. Sarah, you marry my son and you will be the best wife you can be. And Ryan, you will leave Maple Creek the day after the wedding and you will not come back. Ever." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Scenario 2. You tell him the truth. Together. But it has to be before he sets foot on the altar. The choice is yours. But there's no more time. Decide what kind of pain you are going to cause." The ultimatum was clear, brutal, and handed them the razor that would sever one of the ties. The next day they met for the last time on the park bench by the lake. The air was cold, foreshadowing the emotional storm to come. There, they finally had the conversation they should have had 10 years ago. They discussed the two roads Ryan's mother had presented them with, each leading to a different kind of hell. If they told the truth, the image David had of his brother and his fiancée would be destroyed. Trust, shattered. The family, fractured forever. "He would hate you," Sarah said, her voice hoarse. "And he would hate me, and he would have every right," Ryan replied. But what if their love was real, strong enough to survive this explosion? Was it worth causing so much pain for the chance to be together? The other option was silence, a sacrifice. Ryan would leave, this time for good, carrying the regret of losing her twice, and Sarah would marry David, a good man whom she truly loved. But she would do so with a lie at the core of her marriage, a ghost that would live with them forever. "He would be happy," Sarah whispered. "But we never would be. In every one of their happy moments, I would feel like a fraud. And you? I would spend the rest of my life wondering, what if?" Ryan completed. It was a choice between David's happiness and the integrity of their own souls. As they agonized over the decision, Sarah's cell phone rang. It was David. His voice was light, euphoric. "Hi, love. Just wanted to let you know that I got that DJ you wanted, and I was just thinking, it's so close. I'm the luckiest man in the world, Sarah. I can't wait to see you walking towards me." Hearing the pure, innocent happiness in his voice, at the exact moment they were contemplating how to destroy it, was the final blow. Sarah hung up, tears streaming freely. She looked at Ryan, and the pain in her eyes was a mirror of his own. The reality of their actions, of the damage they could cause, became unbearably clear. Ryan stood up. "I know what I have to do," he said, his voice resigned. Sarah didn't ask what. She just nodded as if he had verbalized the painful conclusion they had both reached. He walked away, leaving her alone on the bench. The decision was made, but the audience, like David, didn't know what it was yet. The stage was set for the rehearsal dinner, where the final curtain on their past would finally fall. The restaurant chosen for the rehearsal dinner was filled with laughter and the warm light of candles. It was the personification of a happy beginning. David was the center of joy, radiant next to Sarah, who smiled at everyone. A beautiful and perfectly rehearsed smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ryan sat on the other side of the table, a specter at the feast, applauding at the right moments but with a lost look in his eyes. Only his mother, Mary, perceived the weight in the air between the three of them, the tense calm that precedes a storm. It was time for the toasts. Their father spoke of the pride he felt. And then, all eyes turned to the best man, to Ryan. With his heart pounding, he stood up, glass in hand. He looked first at David. "My brother," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "We grew up competing for everything. But in one thing I could never compete: your heart. You were always the best of us. The one who stayed, the one who cared, the one who built." He then turned to Sarah, and for a second the entire world seemed to disappear. "And you, Sarah, you have given him a happiness I have never seen on his face. And seeing you two together has made me make an important decision about my own life." A pause. The silence in the room was absolute. "I received confirmation today of a job offer I can't refuse, a long-term photography project in Asia. It will be a great adventure." He raised his glass, a sacrificial smile on his face. "I leave in 2 days, right after I see you say I do. A toast to David and Sarah. May your future be as bright as mine has become today." The room erupted in applause. David, shocked and a little sad about the imminent departure but immensely proud, stood up and hugged his brother tightly. "That's amazing, man. I knew you'd go far," he said, oblivious to the true meaning behind those words. Sarah remained seated, the smile frozen on her face, her eyes fixed on Ryan. In that look they said their goodbyes. A silent thank you, a shared pain, a final farewell to the what-if that would haunt them forever. Across the room, Mary wept silently, tears of relief and of a deep sorrow for the son who was sacrificing himself to save them all. The wedding day was beautiful and sunny. Ryan played his role as best man with painful perfection, handing over the rings that would seal the fate of the woman he loved with his brother. During the couple's first dance, he took one last long look at Sarah, who was spinning in David's arms, her face resting on her husband's shoulder. She opened her eyes and met his. It was an instant, an eternity. Without saying goodbye to anyone, Ryan left the reception. The final scene splits. In a hotel room, Sarah looks at her gleaming wedding ring on her finger. She has the secure life and the good man she always dreamed of. But a single tear falls, a silent witness to the price of that peace. Thousands of miles away in an airport, Ryan stares at an old photo on his phone. He and Sarah, teenagers and carefree, on the bench by the lake. He presses delete, and as he walks towards the boarding gate, alone, he chooses exile over destruction. Their secret was safe, and that was his burden and hers forever. And so a secret was buried so that a family could survive. If this story about the difficult choices of love and family loyalty touched your heart, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional dramas like this. Comment your city below and tell us what you would have done in their place. Don't forget to turn on notifications to be the first to know about new videos. A hug, and see you in the next video.